This episode brought to you by these awesome patrons and members. Fixing a Mac SE logic board from MARCHintosh. Warm up the CRT, it's time for another episode. MARCHintosh is here, and what do we have on the bench but an SE30 board? I have a little bit of experience fixing these, so I decided to see if I can tackle this board. The board was sent in to me by a viewer to fix, and it's got quite a few problems with it. It has all of the classic issues that you get with bad capacitors and a bad battery on here. There's lots of gunk on the board and lots of tiny little repairs. Replaced, repaired, recapped. There's a repair right there. So yeah, we need to dig into this and do a lot of trace testing and looking around and seeing what is going on with this machine. But before I do any of that, I'm going to take this over to my cleaning place, my, what's that thing called? It's called a sink. That's what it's called, Joe. I'm going to take that over to a sink and get this a really good cleaning, because hard to see on camera, but the board is still kind of almost slimy and gunky on the surface. It's still got like surface nasty on it. So I want to get this board completely cleaned up before we start tackling any of the surface level issues. So let's take a look at this SE30 board and see what I can see. So this area right here in the upper left corner is tending to have lots of issues. It seems fairly clean. We can see that it's been recapped here, new capacitors put in it. And we have a little bodge wire here. Let's poke at that bodge wire and see what happens. That bodge wire is loose, so we'll have to figure out where the heck that goes and fix that. There's another bodge in there. Still a little bit of flux residue from after I cleaned it, but that's not a huge deal. Things up in here look good. Those capacitors look a little loosey-goosey, but that's okay. That one's in. That capacitor looks good. The board on the whole looks fairly clean. It does not look too bad. These chips, usually, these ones right in here are usually a huge issue, but they're not. They don't look bad at all. The video RAM there is good, and all of our glue logic here looks fine. Processor area and glue looks cool. The floating point unit looks fine. We're starting to get some crust down in here. Let's see if I can get up kind of close for you. Yeah, starting to get a little bit of crust on those chips. Not too bad. Now, that chip, this one here looks pretty gnarly. This one's been, a repair has been attempted there. I'm not sure if that repair is valid or not, but we'll find out. That chip looks kind of gnarly. Yeah. Socket's been replaced. Diode had to be replaced just like I did on my own last SE30, although if this system doesn't work here, it's not too big of a deal if it fails. The RAM sockets all look pretty clean. Doesn't look like there's too much damage down in that area. ROM socket is really clean too, so the board on the whole does not look that bad. It looks like I'm going to have to fix this chip here somehow. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that. And then fix these couple of bodges, or at least double check them. In order to double check this, it goes up underneath of this capacitor. So I'm probably going to have to take this capacitor here out of the board to see where this bodge goes. But on the whole, it doesn't look that bad. Before I do any of that, though, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can double check all these capacitors here. They're all in the correct orientation, but I'm going to double check them to make sure they are actually connected to their spots on the board. And then I'll get this capacitor out and we'll take a look at this bodge wire. Okay, so let's review these bodge fixes before we start digging any further. First things first, I did go ahead and I double checked all these capacitors and tried to realign them a little bit better. They're not perfect, but they're better than they were. Some of them were barely connected to their pads, so I made sure to resolder those down in place. Now, here's bodge number 1, and it looks like it's just this trace right here is bad. and that shouldn't be too bad of a fix, but for some reason the bodge has come loose and it's barely even connected there. So we're going to have to cut back a little bit on both sides of that and rerun that bodge. Next bodge is right over here. We'll have to tone that out and double check that bodge, but that one actually looks like it's in place, so that is not too bad there. But the big one is down in this area down here, and there it is. So basically this 74F258 chip, this surface mount chip, has seen better days. So we're going to want to probably remove that chip, clean this all up super tidy, double check what needs to be connected where, pop the chip back on there, and then double check to see if we need to do any more of these fixes like this one. I'm presuming that this fix was done on the top side because the bottom side was messed up. But it is really hard for me to even see in here to see what's going on with all this crud in the way. So we'll have to get this out of here. And then finally is this this little fix right down in here. For the diode fix right here for the battery. That's just doing some quick continuity tests. But I'm probably going to want to double check that because as you can see, this is loose and it's pulling this this trace up. So we'll want to disconnect this here and come back and reconnect it back here, or even pull this all the way up and connect it up here to the actual end of the battery holder. So I'm going to go ahead and poke through those things now and get those things cleaned up and bring you back when there's something important to report. So there it is, and that is pretty bad. This F28 is, the pads are just destroyed. They are totally gone, and it's actually in some cases hard to see where the pads connect to wires. I think this one goes here and that one connects there. That one's pretty obvious. I think this one loops over to here maybe, and this one loops there, and this one might go up there. I'm not 100% sure, but the upside to all of this is I do have a reference picture from the very beginning of when this was removed. The person who sent me this board took a picture of this when they were trying to fix it themselves, and they're like, hey, what's this, and blah. So I have a picture I can look at to reference this to make sure I have all of my repairs fixed correctly here, but this is going to be a challenge. So I'm going to go ahead and take some time and reference that picture, get these pads pads and traces repaired as best as I can, and then bring you back once that repair has been completed. So there's our fixes for those pads and traces for that 258 there. Now, there are a couple pads down here that I'm going to fix on the top side of the chip because they all kind of swirl around and past each other. And with these tiny wires, with the solder exposed on those wires, I'm afraid that I'm going to get solder bridges underneath the chip, not know about it, and then wonder why the heck nothing works. So I'm going to bridge those on the top. Specifically, this pin here is going to bridge to that pin on the top, coming down around the bottom side of the chip. And then this pin is going to bridge to this pin, again over the top of the chip, with this one trace that flies up this way left to connect, back where it's supposed to connect to. So I'm going to go ahead and get that chip put in now. All fixed. We got all the wires cross-connected in the ways that they need to be cross-connected. Things are tied over to their traces where the traces are supposed to go, and everything is soldered down. So I'm thinking we probably have a good and working board at this point. So let's put some RAM in it, some ROM in it, plug it into a chassis, and see if it runs. You can probably tell since we're looking at the board again that the machine is not fixed. And oh boy, it is not fixed. Plugged it in, turned it on, black screen, no bong, absolutely nothing. So I decided to just take a look around the board, and I settled on ripping out the battery here, since the battery is obviously what caused damage, up there to that F258 chip. And I looked underneath there, and yeah, Lots of nasty stuff. I already found one trace and fixed it. And I started hunting around, because this one was obvious. I started hunting around for more traces and found bad via, bad via, bad via, trace, via, via, via. Lots of badness. So I'm going to have to dig into all of these, get these all repaired, and test it again and see if that fixes the board. Well, it's official. I has a sad, because despite all of the effort I put into trying to get this board to work and trying to save its life, it's officially dead. There is most likely a, well, let me step back and say that this board is a multi-layer board. There's another trace layer inside between a power plane and a ground plane. And I had to cut through a lot of these vias here because they were failing, or they had failed completely through. They were not conducting through to the inner board layer. And I had to do some trace work to find some of these, to find out where they went. And despite everything I could visually identify as failed, tracing through correctly after my repairs, there's just some other trace that's busted here somewhere. And at this point, it's no longer economical to try to fix it. I'm sad to say. It does happen sometimes, and this is why it's important that if you have old retro computers, there's a hashtag we use, it's get the damn batteries out. Seriously, these batteries kill boards. Get them out of the machines, and if at all possible, don't put them back in. These computers are old. You're using them to enjoy them, not to use them for daily drivers. You don't need to have an accurate date and time. Pull the battery out. Save a life. So this client, a friend of mine, but he's also a customer, he's paying me to fix this. Well, he's not paying me anything now because I wasn't able to repair it, and that's my policy. If I can't fix it, you don't get charged. He needs me to remove the swim chip, the Sander Woz integrated machine chip, out of here for the floppy controller, so that he can put this chip on another machine or have it saved for some purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and get that chip popped off there and get this back out to him. It was really sad to not be able to save this board, but that's just the way it happens sometimes. Well, I'm happy to report that there might actually be a MARCHintosh miracle on our hands. I contacted my client about this board and said, hey, do you mind if I send this out to somebody else who might have a little bit better chance of figuring out what is going on with this? No promises, but we might get lucky and save a board. And he said, heck yeah, ship that thing out. So I am sending this out to Steve of Mac84. If you watch my channel, you probably know who I'm talking about. And he's going to see if he can take a crack at this board and get it fixed for us. Now, as I'm recording this, it's about mid-February. It's not even really MARCHintosh yet when I'm recording this, but I'm hoping to get it sent out to him early enough that he'll be able to take a look at it. If we're lucky, he'll be able to fix it, and if we're double lucky, he'll be able to show you all that the board is fixed during MARCHintosh. No promises, crossed fingers, but we'll see what happens. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Remember to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on my latest adventures. You can also support me by becoming a patron on Patreon or by snagging some merch on jcm-1.com. Links in the description. Well, that's all for today's episode. While you're here, check out some of my other videos, and remember, MARCHintosh is all you need.